Shalom family, how you doing? Pastor Kofi back at it again, aka the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant of Christ. We are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Thank you for joining us on our journey, the 12 myths of Christmas. We're not here to say you're going to hell if you don't agree with what we're saying. We're simply trying to give you some reasoning, some context to the facts that you may or may not have to ensure that you comprehend what is being celebrated in Christmas and why we have decided that we are going to follow what the word of Yah says and not celebrate Christmas. And one of the myths that's there is the 12 days themselves. When people talk about the 12 days of Christmas, right, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me and all that, Christmas carols in and of themselves is a wild thing to even be into. Now, a lot of people don't know this. However, if you look up the history of even Christmas carols and the 12 days of Christmas, what you would discover is that Christmas carols were actually a threat. People would go around Europe and they would sing these songs to say, we're going to, in fact, hurt you if you don't deal in what the 12 days of Christmas is. So now you have to ask yourself, well, if that's the truth, what are the 12 days of Christmas? Right? We got to ask questions. We got to be honest. If that's what we're dealing with, then what, in fact, are the 12 days of Christmas? If people are hurting people or threatening to hurt people because of these 12 days, what are these 12 days? So allow me to give you an answer. So when somebody talks about the 12 days of Christmas, or when they would sing it back in the day, right, there was a 12-day period. There was a 12-day period of time in which people were going to switch positions. So if you were a preacher, the preacher might become a prostitute. If you were somebody that was rich, the rich man might become a poor man. And this was due to Saturnalia, or even other pagan holy days and holidays, things like that you had. This was when people would switch positions. So during the 12 days of Christmas, you would switch positions. Now, if you weren't somebody that was going to switch positions, they would threaten you because you weren't supposed, if you had money, you need to let somebody else have that money and switch positions. Although even the rich elite of Greco-Roman times, they didn't necessarily do that either, right? They didn't necessarily switch positions, but they kind of acted like it. They'd let at least people sit at the table with them, but they would never serve them. But they kind of sort of switch positions. One of the things that you have a proof of this is actually the story of Scrooge. The reason why the story of Scrooge was such a huge deal and why they still make you look at it today is because Scrooge was a very scary character due to the fact that everybody else was going to switch during these 12 days. However, Scrooge was so powerful and so scary to people that nobody was going to threaten him. Even though he was old in age, people were afraid to do anything to Scrooge, even when he wouldn't switch during the 12 days of Christmas. So we now know the story as, oh, he wouldn't just celebrate Christmas with people. But the reality was he was supposed to allow people who didn't have to have, and he was supposed to become a have-not. So do we believe that that's something that needs to happen in Christmas time or 12 days leading up to anything? Is there any biblical reference that says if you're a have, you must become a have-not, and if you're a have-not, you must become a have, simply because it's part of a pagan holiday and therefore for these 12 days only, but then we'll let you go right back to what your oppressive situation is? Of course we don't believe that. So once again, one of the easiest ways to be able to look at this is just simply go, oh, 12 days of Christmas kind of jacked up. Maybe we shouldn't try to allow something like that to keep affecting our lives. And maybe we should look past it and stop giving credence to myths and realize that myths and mythology is there to help you to study things, to help you to be off track and help you to be controlled. Remember, if you have no knowledge of self, you can't have self-control. If you take self away from self-control, the only thing left is control. That being said, thank you again for being with us. We appreciate you all. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, aka the Shadow Man One, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember as always that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family.